So many editors think they're bad at editing because, despite all the tools they have, they still can't put the puzzle together and create. So they push harder and harder, but on the wrong path. Editing is like playing a game of chess. But unlike chess, where you have an external opponent, editing is a match between you and yourself. Now, if you look closer, you'll realize that you're actually missing a few pieces. And without them, it won't take long before the entire game falls apart. But here's the problem. Those pieces were never supposed to be found on the board. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a street, a forest, or a random place and started imagining yourself there, walking with someone, running through a field, living a moment that never actually happened? Or, let me make it simpler, have you ever daydreamed? Because if you have, then I've got news for you. You're already an editor. In fact, all of us are. From the moment we're born, our brains start collecting footage, sounds, faces, movements, conversations, music. We observe far more than we realize. Most of it gets pushed into the background because our brains are busy focusing on survival, but none of it is truly gone. It's all still there. And then one day we hear a song, watch a movie, and suddenly our minds start editing. We cast people into scenes. We imagine conversations. We create stories. I bet you've already cast yourself as Batman. Or even the Joker. You know, we've all been heroes and villains in the movies we've watched. I mean, somehow, even in our heads, we know how the freaking camera moves. But there's a problem. Sharing these thoughts is cringe. But what if the cringe is the answer? Creativity is cringe. Art is cringe. If you look at Picasso's work, you'll understand the concept. Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque invented Cubism. They went against the rules. They broke the pattern. The funny thing is, we only call it cringe when it's our own idea. When someone else does it, we call it creativity. Now, I want you to do something. Play a song you like and close your eyes. Just imagine. That's it. Don't worry if the ideas are stupid. Just let your mind do whatever it wants. Now, pause those scenes and study them carefully. Grab a piece of paper and write down every cringe idea, effect, shot, and detail that comes to your mind. And just like that, you found the first hidden piece. Now that we have our vision, it's time to add some spice to it. It's Tuesday morning. You go for a run, and later that day you're meeting your friend. Suddenly you see a very big mouse on the corner of the street. A few hours later, you meet your friend and excitedly describe what you saw. I just saw a huge mouse. It was the size of a cat. The mouse wasn't actually the size of a cat. An average cat is much bigger than even a very large mouse. But when we describe something to someone else, we exaggerate it, because exaggeration adds an entertaining layer to what we saw and felt, allowing other people to connect with our emotions. Now, if we edited everything exactly as it happened, without manipulating reality or exaggerating it, it would be boring. That's why we use fast pacing. That's why we add sound effects like risers to add tension, because we're trying to convey a feeling to the audience. We use visual effects to show emotion and excitement. Even in animation, we use things like bounce effects to exaggerate movement. So the next time you edit, make sure you describe that mouse as the size of a cat and create the illusion. And of course, without the right tools, none of this is possible. Which software should I use? What techniques should I learn? How much time should I spend practicing? Painful questions. But none of them are as painful as this one. Where should I even start? But before we answer those questions, let me introduce you to cinema. Like many of you, I love watching movies, but the way I watch them might be a little different. For me, cinema is where everything started. As one of the biggest industries in the world, movies are designed to influence our emotions, thoughts, and even decisions. But have you ever stopped and wondered, what makes them so powerful? Why can it make us care about people who don't even exist? Let me show you the world that taught me all of this. Every movie begins with an idea. And every idea has a plot, a beginning and an end. When a hero goes on a journey, if I were to give you an example, it would be this. On August 7th, 1974, the people of Lower Manhattan witnessed one of the most unbelievable performances in history. A man walking on a wire between the twin towers of the World Trade Center. It was absolute madness, but for Philip, it was freedom. A small gust of wind could have turned his performance into his death, so he had to make a decision. Stay on the wire, or step off and surrender to the police waiting for him. Philip's story is one of the most exciting ideas in filmmaking. There are documentaries about it and even a Hollywood film called The Walk, which I highly recommend watching. But again, the number of ways you can tell this story is endless. Philip was the hero of his own journey, a man who set himself an impossible goal after seeing the Twin Towers in a newspaper and deciding to illegally walk a wire between them. From a storytelling perspective, I chose to show you a glimpse of the ending at the beginning of the documentary, but let's see what I actually did in the edit. The editing process includes a few steps, and for me, choosing the music is the first one. I use the Upbeat website to find my music, and after listening to enough tracks, I choose one. The second step is storytelling. Now, just like in the vision step, I simply play the music and try to imagine the intro in my head before I even start writing it. It always works. And after I find something, I write everything down. The structure of the intro looks like this. It's normally around 30 seconds. I start by telling the date and anchoring the event that happened. Then I continue by talking about the feelings and atmosphere surrounding the event before introducing the character, which is Philippe. Alongside introducing the character, I use contrast to describe the emotions by saying madness and freedom, which separates him from everyone else. Then, I simply talk about the decision he had to make and leave the audience with a question. That way, it sparks their curiosity and makes them want to keep watching the video. Now that our intro is ready, it's time to find the assets. First, I gather as much footage from the internet as I can. But for some scenes, like 1974 Manhattan and the Twin Towers by themselves, I couldn't find anything. So I asked AI to generate those images. I use Magnific and simply describe the scenes I want through prompts. I also animate a couple of scenes, so I upload a reference image of Philip into an image generator and ask Nano Banana to recreate the exact same image in a higher quality version. I also generate another angle of the same scene, like a side view. This scene is very aesthetic because it has a symmetrical composition, with the Twin Towers on both sides and Philippe standing in the middle. Humans are naturally drawn to symmetry and patterns, so shots like these are usually very pleasing to look at. Then, for those scenes, I simply use AI to separate the character from the background so I can animate them later. Now it's time to assemble everything we gathered. After importing the music for the beginning of the intro, before the music kicks in, I put a black screen and wanted to write a good Philip quote. So I searched on Google and found a quote that I really liked. Then I simply added a typewriter effect to the text, which you can definitely find in almost any software you use. Actually, all the editing techniques I'm explaining can be done in almost any software or app. After that, I simply place the footage based on the beat of the music. So every time a beat hits, the footage changes. Then it was time to add motion. So I gave all the footage a zoom in or zoom out effect. It feels more dynamic. Again, it's very simple. All you have to do is create scale keyframes with around a 5 to 10% difference between the beginning and the end of each shot. And I did this for all the footage I had. Now, for those scenes where we separated the character from the background to animate them, we just need to create rotation keyframes on the character. I used a value of around -3 and +3 degrees every 2 to 3 seconds and repeated it, so it feels like the character is slightly moving on the wire. Then I simply added text, applied any intro animation I wanted to it, and placed it behind the character. Then I just added some effects to it. I started by changing the blending modes of things like fog, fire effects, and old film overlays. Then, for some shots, I also added transitions. And finally, we did the sound design, adding whooshes, risers, and other sound effects, as well as fading out the ending of the intro, was the final thing that I did. But now that we know some simple editing techniques, would that be enough? I would say, define enough. For some editors, including me, nothing is ever enough. I put a lot of time into a single video, and so do many other editors, sometimes working with entire teams and going back and forth for weeks. I mostly use After Effects and assemble everything in Premiere Pro. But for someone just starting, which software should they use? I would say, the one you're most comfortable with. Learning techniques is more important than the software itself. You can always level up later, but in my opinion, you should have the ability to work with any app possible, regardless of the software. When an idea comes to mind, I've always felt like creators and artists are completing each other's sentences, like Dante did with Virgil. Not because they thought the same, but because they saw the same things from different perspectives. Now the question is, what will you do with those pieces? You're ready to play the game of creation, another hero on another journey, and perhaps complete another sentence.